No one in Donetsk slept that night. At 6:40 a.m., as sunbeams barely pierced the grey Ukrainian horizon, a soundless wave of dread rippled through every forward post. Russia's most trusted armored spearhead, 50 tanks, a phalanx of 30 armored vehicles, a cloud of 70 suicide drones, roared awake, primed to smash through the last of Ukraine's eastern defenses. This massive war machine, nourished by victories and fueled by certainty, was about to thrust into open country, one more iron hammer swinging west. But what they couldn't see, what no satellite or surging general could anticipate, was that each calculated mile brought them closer to catastrophe. Right now, before you witness history unfold, subscribe to our channel so you'll never miss a moment of the truth behind the world's bloodiest battlegrounds. The world's eyes were fixed on a single red line across the steppe, the edge of Donetsk, seized by Russia 2 years ago, now a staging ground for the war's most ambitious assault since the first shell fell in 2022. From the glow of command screens in Moscow to the flickering monitors in NATO emergency cells, analysts murmured in awe. 50 main battle tanks, T-90s, armor thick enough to shrug off artillery, sensors sharp enough to pierce the fog, rumbled forward in perfect formation. 30 troop carriers, bristling with automatic cannons, ferried over 700 infantry, their radios buzzing with encrypted orders, their weapons primed for the kill. High overhead, a lethal ballet. 70 unmanned aerial vehicles, not drones for reconnaissance, but missiles with wings, programmed to die if they met resistance, programmed to kill if they did not. Every instrument of destruction radiated confidence. Satellite relays triangulated targets with ruthless precision. Digital maps tracked approaching units. Drone swarms carved corridors of fire through the haze. Russia's columns crawled with electronic armor, bristling with anti-missile arrays and arrayed in geometric lines designed to overwhelm, overrun, annihilate. The sunrise flashed on their steel carapaces as they surged forth, unstoppable, unbreakable, or so it seemed. But confidence is a double-edged sword. Beneath the outward calm in Ukrainian command bunkers, a different kind of calculation was unfolding, one colder, patient, meticulously sharpened by months of watching, learning, and waiting. The 93rd Mechanized Brigade had been silent for days, but their silence was a lie. Under the fields, a patchwork of fresh soil and broken stalks, they had sown more than just defenses. They had constructed a layered labyrinth of destruction, minefields twisting through 3 square miles, fought 200 anti-tank charges cunningly hidden beneath every plausible approach. Narrow passageways baiting Russian drivers into channels with no return. Generals watched grainy drone feeds as Russia advanced, tracking every inflection point, every wheel that dared the edge of the kill zone. Every moment drew the tanks closer to an engineered abyss. For weeks, Ukrainian engineers worked without sleep, calibrating tripwires linked to pressure sensors beneath the ruts, electromagnetic triggers set to detonate if tampered with. Above, Ukrainian UAVs orbited silently, feeding real-time positions to underground servers, armor, infantry clusters, drone signals, all mapped and calculated to the meter. As the morning ticked toward that fate-charmed hour, the entire weight of Ukraine's defense hinged on a single principle: timing. Set off too early, and the Russians would scatter, regroup, come again. Too late, and the armored wedge would break through, turning defense into disaster. Nerves tensed. Sweat beaded on the brows of operators monitoring a mosaic of screens, heat signatures, vehicle counts, radio intercepts. Ukraine's generals knew, if they failed, months of resistance would be erased, and the enemy would pour westward like black water. To the Russian crews, the road ahead seemed deceptively open, undulating fields broken by dirt roads and low, scorched farmhouses. Through thermal sights, the rise and fall of terrain revealed no secrets, no glint of steel, no hint of danger. They pressed ahead, emboldened by the absence of artillery fire, interpretable as panic or retreat. Their columns drew tighter, forming armored spear points to punch through what they assumed was a weakened flank. Inside the lead T-90, the rumble of the diesel engine blurred with the coded chatter on the radio. The tank commander, eyes narrowed behind smoked glass, repeated the same phrase over and over. Clear path, minimal resistance. All forward units advance. The Russian war machine's greatest weakness was its own momentum. Yet the theater they entered was not as innocent as it appeared. Just meters from their tracks, buried mere inches beneath the surface, lay waiting the first in a series of devastating surprises. Armed with anti-handling sensors and tuned to detonate at a specific weight profile, every mine was a silent verdict on the Russian gamble. Tucked along the narrowest corridors, where Russian commanders might spot safe lanes on thermal, additional mines converged, shaped to funnel entire columns into killing grounds under the invisible crosshairs of remote triggers. Still, as dawn warmed the eastern sky, a solitary crisis flickered on the Ukrainian side. A resupply truck, confused by a misread grid, barreled perilously close to the edge of the minefield. Disaster seemed imminent. At the last instant, a drone operator, watching a black-and-white video feed from 200 meters above, screamed a code into the radio. Tires screeched. The truck halted just 6 feet from oblivion. Adrenaline surged. From one mistake, the whole trap could have collapsed. Even the best-laid plans wavered beneath the chaos of war. Western analysts estimated the cost of Russia's assault at more than $350 million. An entire year's worth of armored procurement hurled onto this single patch of earth. Yet Ukraine's defense was one of patience, precision, and understanding. Not of brute force, but of silent geometry and the certainty that sometimes victory comes not from meeting force with force, but from leading the enemy, unknowing, wholly, into the jaws of fate. The final radio check stilled. Ukraine's commanders listened, waiting for the unmistakable clatter of tracks striking steel, for the rupture of earth, for Russian voices, once sure, rising in panic on the static. Everything depended on the next 90 seconds, a choreography of destruction set to the clockwork of war. And as the world watched, time itself seemed to hold its breath. At precisely 6:40 a.m., the trap that had been weeks in the making finally sprang. Russian T-90s at the vanguard, in tight formation, crushed forward across fields, shimmering with early sun. Rain-washed earth, tire ruts crisscrossed, only the faintest hint of threat in the cool breeze. Their confidence hovered near arrogance. Enemy resistance had been minimal, their intelligence was sure. Except, beneath those very tracks, death slumbered. It began with a guttural metallic roar that shattered the morning calm. The lead Russian tank, its treads catching a pressure plate cunningly disguised in the loose earth, disappeared in a searing eruption of flame, dust, and mangled steel. Instantly, less than 4 seconds after, the chain exploded. Shockwaves rippled as a dozen more tanks rolled into hell, each detonating charges precisely calibrated for their weight, each eruption ripping open the earth and casting black smoke into the soft morning sky. The mined zone had been mapped and engineered with a cruelty that only war could justify. Tripwires, seismic sensors and remote triggers were spread through 3 square miles, funneling vehicles along safe corridors that were anything but. Within 90 seconds, columns meant to break Ukraine's front had turned into an orchestra of chaos. Turrets blown skyward, fuel fires raging out of control, radios screaming for status and rescue. Panic crackled in Russian comms. Commanders demanded status, none willing yet to believe how quickly the ground had shifted beneath them. Soldiers poured from stricken vehicles, scanning for snipers, for shelter, for any path out. What they found was only silence, then thunder. Overhead, Ukrainian drones, small, silent, maneuverable, dropped from the clouds. Some were tasked for observation, relaying live feeds to commanders below. Others carried munitions, laser-guided or programmed to hit heat signatures. They hovered low, weaving between burning wrecks and trees, each drone's camera hunting for the next exposed target. Russian infantry tried desperately to target them, firing up with rifles, tracking with portable missiles. But the drones came on, relentless, thin silhouettes against the rising smoke. Explosions punctuated the madness. Armored personnel carriers blasted open, trucks loaded with supplies vaporized. A command van struck directly through an open hatch. The electronic war commenced. Ukrainian countermeasures jammed Russian signals, flooding their airwaves with false GPS data, making drone gun sights drift and tank turrets swivel uselessly. Every Russian attempt at coordinated response sputtered and failed. Panic grew in Russian ranks as battalion leaders lost contact with their units, each man convinced the next shout on the net was his last. An entire armored regiment, trained for offense, was now boxed in, blind and silenced. Just 15 minutes after the first explosion, Ukraine's own armored column burst onto the scene. 32 T-84 Oplot tanks thundered forward at a full charge, paint scorched, guns blazing, running not away from the kill zone but straight at its heart. The ground quaked as these gleaming machines roared past burnt wagons and ruptured earth, maneuvering with clinical precision. Their targets were the stunned remnants of the Russian spearhead, tanks attempting to reverse, crews leaping from hatches, vehicles rolling helpless in mud or flames. The crack and flash of 125mm shells echoed as Ukrainian battalions unleashed a barrage point-blank into the weakened line. Not even the sky was safe for Russia. The handful of surviving Russian suicide drones, built to dive onto Ukrainian tanks and explode, were now met by a wall of anti-aircraft fire. Shkval 6 rotary cannons, mounted atop tanks, spat out 4,000 rounds a minute, sowing the air with hot lead. Some drones disintegrated just meters above their targets, raining debris but failing to harm any crew. Ukrainian electronic warfare units saturated the frequency bands, redirecting a few wayward drones back toward their own origin, slamming explosively into abandoned Russian vehicles. Elsewhere along the flank, hidden howitzers, themselves invisible to Russian spotters, opened fire. Their shells walked meticulously along the Russian retreat, targeting fuel trucks, supply pickups, even medics rushing to recover the wounded. The barrage was brutal, short-lived and efficient. Ukrainian command had learned discipline. There would be no victory marred by waste or civilian loss. In the shadows, lining the fields and trenches, Ukrainian elite infantry, fire teams split into squads of snipers, anti-armor specialists, and EW, electronic warfare units, began their own sweep. The moment Russian infantry tried regrouping behind a burning supply truck, they were cut down by precision fire. Ghosts in the mist, one Russian later called them, deadly, silent, everywhere and nowhere. Suddenly, another rupture. Within a half-collapsed Russian command vehicle, Ukrainian scouts discovered a wounded officer hiding beneath the body of a conscript. His uniform gave away his rank. Regimental Commander Viktor Sayonovich, a linchpin of the Southern campaign. The capture was electric. Encrypted hard drives, satellite phones, and orders for the next 72 hours were seized with him. No counterattack would be possible now. All the while, a sense of unreality gripped both sides. What had begun as a calculated high-tech Russian offensive was, in less than 45 minutes, reduced to a desperate rout. Engines howled as the few functioning Russian vehicles sought safe passage, only to find themselves boxed into kill funnels or bogged in cratered earth. Groups of infantry, stripped of leadership and purpose, fled toward wooded gullies, only to be intercepted by Ukrainian flanking units who had spent the previous night crawling through irrigation tunnels. Smoke billowed across the steppe. From space, satellites captured heat signatures of more than 40 burning vehicles. Drones panned over the carnage, broadcasting live evidence to monitors across Kyiv, Brussels, and Washington. Military analysts worldwide whispered in disbelief. The cream of Russia's mechanized force had been defeated not just by superior weapons, but by superior timing, patience and understanding of terrain. And the trap was not only physical. Psychological warfare rippled through the Russian ranks. Rumors spread by intercepted radio, fake voices and real explosions convinced even the most hardened conscripts that the field was crawling with invisible Ukrainian commandos. Panic led to mistakes, friendly fire, hasty surrenders, desperate attempts to tunnel through minefields that only led to more death. By 7:20 a.m., Ukrainian radio crackled with confirmation. More than 20 tanks and 40 additional vehicles destroyed or abandoned, hundreds of Russian casualties and prisoners, including the regimental commander, secured. But the counterattack rolled on. Ukrainian commanders, sensing not just a tactical victory but a chance to forever alter the front, pressed forward. Flanks swept behind the shattered spearhead, cutting off all routes of escape. Through a mosaic of drone feeds, battlefield computers mapped every remaining Russian unit. The few who attempted breakout by road found bridges collapsed, routes mined, ambush teams waiting. As the final Russian holdouts tried to evade capture, Ukrainian spotters radioed coordinates for precise artillery fire, ending pockets of resistance before retreat could be organized. What had begun at exactly 6:40 a.m. as Russia's boldest assault of the year had by 8:00 a.m. become the costliest defeat in recent memory. A calamity that would echo through command briefings, political debates, and war textbooks for decades. And in the seething silence that followed, Ukraine stood vigilant not only over wrecked armor, but the powerful lesson they had taught. That patience, cunning, and unbreakable resolve can turn a battlefield into a trap from which there is no escape. As sunrise faded and the fire of battle began to recede, silence settled uneasily across the scarred fields east of Donetsk. The acrid smoke of burnt oil and ruptured steel drifted through the air, mingling with the low hum of Ukrainian drones as they scanned for survivors and recorded the evidence of victory. What remained of Russia's armored spearhead lay broken, turrets torn from hulls, vehicles half sunk in impact craters, the earth gouged and blackened where fierce courage met relentless design. For the soldiers who stood among the wreckage, glory was a hollow word. The cost of war was etched into every heap of twisted machinery and every lifeless uniform scattered across the once fertile soil. Ukrainian medics, moving with brisk purpose, tended to the wounded without flinching at the badges or languages spoken. Here, amidst the chaos, the line between enemy and ally seemed a ghost, mercy given to any who reached out a trembling hand. In one corner of the field, a corporal gently poured water for a young Russian prisoner, his face streaked with grime and fear, while televisions and news feeds across the world replayed images of once mighty tanks reduced to cinders. Among the prisoners was a singular figure, the captured Russian colonel, his uniform dark with blood and dirt, eyes fixed not on his captors, but on the distant horizon where defeat had come so suddenly. The files and drives confiscated from his person would, in the coming days, unravel secrets of Russia's southern campaign, a haul of intelligence the likes of which Ukraine had not seen since the earliest days of the invasion. As Ukrainian troops secured the area, an eerie calm replaced the thunder of guns. Rescue teams sifted through the casualties, raising battered flags beside makeshift medical tents. The jubilation was muted, marked less by celebration than by a heavy, knowing exhaustion. For while victory had been decisive, its price, measured in lost friends, ruined land, and lives forever altered, could not be ignored. Reports streamed to command units. Over 40 Russian vehicles destroyed or abandoned, more than 200 enemy casualties, several dozen prisoners, including officers. Russian radio traffic fell silent as the chain of command collapsed. Panic and disbelief radiated back toward the rear, where Kremlin officials hesitated to brief the public on the scale of disaster. In Kyiv, military analysts traced every detail on their screens, their faces illuminated in the blue wash of satellite feeds. Western officials, watching in real time, began to re-examine old doctrines. No longer could overwhelming force and high technology alone guarantee battlefield success. The world's strategists studied the lessons of Donetsk, that patience, ingenuity, and the will to defend one's home could upend even the most costly, elaborate attacks. Even those who had doubted Ukraine's ability to withstand an onslaught of such magnitude now found themselves reconsidering the balance of power. Across Ukraine, news of the victory rippled far and wide. Civilians who had spent the morning hidden in basements or sheltering behind shattered walls emerged to hear the latest reports, some quietly weeping with relief, others already preparing for the work of rebuilding lives. The battered but still standing city blocks became symbols of resilience. Each day survived was another victory, not only for the army, but for the nation. From soldiers to teachers, from medics to farmers, a shared sense of sacrifice and defiance bound the people together. The moral weight of the day settled quietly. In a televised interview, a retired general compared Ukraine's defense to the desperate stands at Bastogne and Stalingrad. But what set this engagement apart, what made it an inflection point, was the degree of discipline, precision, and humanity exhibited in the heat of combat. Rather than chase fleeing enemies with vengeance, Ukrainian forces secured the field, delivered medical aid, and began the solemn task of honoring both the fallen and the captured. In a war stained by atrocities, the memory of compassion beneath the banner of purpose offered a rare moment of dignity that echoed far beyond the front. In the hours that followed, as families prayed and analysts calculated, the magnitude of what had been accomplished settled over both sides of the front. Russia's advance had not only been stymied, but decisively humiliated. Its aura of mechanical invincibility exposed as a brittle illusion. The cost was staggering. Hundreds of millions in materiel, irreplaceable lives, and a blow to morale that would reverberate in briefing rooms from Moscow to Minsk. For Ukraine, the battle did not simply halt an offensive. It set a new standard for what modern, decentralized, adaptive warfare could achieve against a numerically and technologically superior foe. As the sun set on that blood-soaked day, one enduring lesson emerged. True strength is measured not only in steel and firepower, but in the resolve to outthink, outwait, and when given the chance, to offer mercy. In the charred silence after the storm, hope flickered anew, proof that even under the most savage assault, the spirit of a free people can endure, adapt, and prevail.